Hello and welcome to the Empower Couples Podcast, where here you get modern, non-boring relationship advice for you and your partner to communicate like pros, fight smarter, and stay in the same team no matter the challenge that you face. I am one of your hosts, Aaron Freeman.
And I'm Jocelyn Freeman, but you all just know us as the Freemans.
And this episode is about establishing boundaries with your in-laws to prevent conflicts and create more harmony.
Some of you just went, yes, we need to talk about this in-law conversation. And it is great that we have our family expanding as we get into a romantic partnership, but there's definitely some conversations to have about boundaries, especially if maybe you grew up in different environments, and so your experience being around the different family members can be different. Aaron, this is very relevant for us, given we just got back from a trip, right?
Well, yeah, we went to Ohio to see my family and then extended the trip since we were on the East Coast to see a part of your family in Boston. So, of course, we did some social media, some Instagram and TikTok videos, and we were almost surprised when you say of the amount of comments that we got back saying what we have experienced before in the past for ourselves, that most of the time these trips are not relaxing. And not only that, there's also this probability, if you will, that conflicts arise. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, we just came off of this trip, and thankfully we've implemented a lot of these things that you are about to hear today. But because of all the comments, we know this is an important topic to do.
Exactly. And, we have had some great times with each other's families, but there's definitely been conversations that we have preventatively. And that's one of the big switches that we're going to go into. But let's talk about boundaries, because I know that word can somewhat feel limiting sometimes, or as though it just takes away something being natural and organic.
Yeah, good point.
But think about boundaries as a way that you and your partner together as a team are looking to create peace, harmony, in a way protect your coupleship, your partnership, your family, because maybe you value things different from your family, or there's preferences that for you are important that aren't to yours. And so boundaries are a way to create peace, not to create distance. It's making sure you and your partner are on the same page and you are making sure that things align with what you value as a couple.
And this is such an interesting topic because you think that when you go on a trip to see extended family, that's going to be a very connecting, peaceful, relaxing time. And maybe it is for some of you, but you probably are at least in the boat where whether it's the majority of the time that way, you probably still find yourself in conflicts with family. So why does this happen? Well, it's because boundaries get blurred or they get crossed and expectations go unmet. Now, just knowing that, you think, oh, well, I should be able to then just really prevent all things from happening. But a part of this is that boundaries sometimes get communicated, sometimes don't, and the majority of the time it's that they don't.
Exactly. And not only, I think there's two parts of not getting communicated. Number one, not getting communicated between you and your partner, but then also between you two and then whoever's involved, whether it is, let's say it was your parents, Aaron, or my family when visiting them. So there's important communication between the two of you. And then we'll talk about the application and the communication that goes to the in-laws.
And then a part of why they don't get communicated also have two parts. And it's because you have to really break this down a little bit. You don't realize them beforehand is number one. And also it's because you find it difficult to set boundaries. And by setting, obviously you have to communicate them. Communicating them is setting them. You find that difficult because you don't want to upset the family members. Mm-hmm. Now in the first one, let me just give a quick example. Well, you'll see it as we go. You don't always know what your expectations are. You set your intention maybe for the trip and we're going to be connected, it's going to be peaceful, it's going to be smooth, and then something happens that you wouldn't have been able to see ahead of time. Mm-hmm. Things come up. So I don't know if it's half, but a good portion is going to be things happen in the moment. You wouldn't have even known to set that as a boundary. So you're going to need to be able to express kind of an upset and set a boundary in the moment. And then real quick on this second piece, you do not want to upset your family members by setting what, as you mentioned, seems to be a limitation or a constraint. Here you are visiting with them and you travel to see them, so you don't want to set some sort of boundary that seems limiting to the time that you're there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you think about this as we go into this, so what if you're in that second boat, then what you're telling us basically, you are willing to be upset yourself rather than the possibility of upsetting them.
Ooh, interesting. And that's where people pleasing can come in a way,
that's right.
Or just a complete fear of conflict. And so maybe you will, you'll just get yourself frustrated. You'll go into your room at night and be like, gosh, I'm so frustrated. It always happens. Or with your partner, here we go again. Every time we visit your family. So you're either arguing with yourself, you're arguing with your partner instead of maybe.
Or like to your point, you're holding it in.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, this always happens with my parents.
Yes.
I hate this part. But then you don't express it because, again, you don't want to upset them. So what? You're willing to be so upset within yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Are you really having the best time? Are you really expressing the fullness of yourself? No, you're not. You're withholding. You're holding back yourself, the ability to connect on maybe a deeper level, all because of this illusionary thought that you can't bring up something. Mm-hmm. Now, honestly, as we go into this, you have to own that if you're not expressing because of what we're just saying, then it's you don't trust your family that they can even receive the requests that you make.
And maybe for some families, that's the case, actually. Maybe your family kind of has this unspoken expectation that there's nothing off limits, right? And all is on the table and everything. And then that has to be a conversation between you and your partner. Does that work for us? But what we don't want you to have continue is that one or both of you goes on this trip to see the in-laws and there's this perpetual feeling as though boundaries are crossed. That's also where resentment can kick in, or just really not enjoying yourself there. And so yes, some of your family members may take it personally. However, we do believe, because communication's our thing, that you can express things in a way that can be received well. Mm-hmm. That can be received in a way that feels connecting. It feels as though it's of service to all parties, and that isn't in a reactionary way. What we're not having you do is go to them after 2 or 3 days with being with your in-laws and be like, we are so frustrated. You are crossing our boundary. No, that's a reactionary
Never
expression.
coming back here.
That's a reactionary expression of your boundaries and your expectations.
So we know that's going to feel like a very new and difficult and uncertain conversation to have, but there is something we want to offer so that you can have a framework to be able to have that conversation.
Yes.
Gone can be the days of these upsets being unexpressed, of having a trip with your family be something that's not relaxing, not connecting. And what is that?
Well, we are hosting the Couples Workshop online so you can attend anywhere in the world. And by the way, the podcast isn't over. We've got more content coming up, but we want to make sure that you all hear this because we have hosted almost 50 events in person in Arizona now, but you get to attend no matter where you are in the world. The Couples Workshop is a half-day event with guided exercises that are going to support your communication, understanding each other, preventing unnecessary conflicts. And this workshop will help you communicate better in that half day. Don't let it be 5 months or a year of trying to improve your communication. Let us guide you. Go through these exercises that are proven to help. And they are things, you guys, that we can't explain the exercise fully on a podcast. You need to see it visually. You need to do the worksheet and the exercise with us. So the podcast is not a replacement of the exercises and the content and the workbooks that we do. So go to thecouplesworkshop.com right now, and it is on August 21st. Now, if you register within the next week, you can get $50 off from the Couples Workshop tickets. So enter the coupon code podcast50 to get that discount. It's only available until July 17th. So make sure that you go ahead and use that while it is still active, and we can't wait to see you in August.
Now, the power of that is going to be in those segments of upsets where it happens in the moment and you could not see it coming. Something happens, right? So that's when that framework is going to be even more powerful. So that's not something we can tell you because you're not going to see it. So we can't even tell you what those are going to be. What we can do is give some examples of some boundaries that you could see ahead of time that you can talk with you and your partner about what's going to be best for us, and then communicate that with your in-laws or just your own individual family to help avoid some conflicts and create more harmony. And the first one is staying with family versus a hotel or Airbnb.
Yeah, so does your family just kind of expect that you're going to be staying there and you're going to be in your room, and that means they're going to see you all day, every hour? Now, maybe you love that. We enjoy staying with Aaron's family in Ohio, for example. When we stayed with them for a month last summer, so it was an extended trip though, we had a conversation about how we would still like alone time in our room and upstairs, and times we were going to be working and things like that. So it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. You can still be staying with them, but yet communicate a boundary about, getting some quiet time at night, or making sure that you have a couple hours to work, or anything that's going to make it feel more comfortable. Another example of boundaries that could come up around in-laws is topics of conversation. I mean, a big one that's obvious, right, is like politics. Is that a hot topic that just creates conflict and frustration? Maybe there needs to be a boundary around that. Or different parenting philosophies. That can be a topic of conversation. Aaron, what about the unsolicited advice that in-laws can sometimes enjoy giving?
And sometimes family can feel like, not that it's their role, but that they can share their opinion and advice with you without even asking. And, things that we can think of, it would be around parenting. Oh, you should be parenting your kid like this. This doesn't work. Or they don't even ask you what the parenting philosophy is that you're doing with your kids, and they do whatever they want. And another one might be around your relationship. So they might feel like they can just express to you how you're not handling your relationship with your partner well enough, or how you could or should be doing this better. Just anything around parenting and or your relationship. Oftentimes advice can just feel like it's okay to just freely give whenever they want. And this would be a good place that, if you're not looking for parenting advice, or if you would rather that your parents or in-laws follow your ideology, your parenting strategy. These are all really great conversations to have ahead of time. Another one, which you started to allude to already, Jocelyn, would be time boundaries. Mm-hmm. And there are a number of examples of time boundaries. First one being like the segments of time together and apart during the day. And this can really lead to expectations of being together and talking like all the time. Mm-hmm. From the time that you wake up to the time that you go to sleep, you're with your family, you're talking, and this can feel like exhausting. Mm-hmm. I mean, even if you're someone that loves talking with your family, in your regular day, are you talking to people 100% of the time? Mm-mm. I mean, even if you're a business owner like us, we talk to couples like a lot. I mean, daily, 4 or 5 couples a day. And there's times for you and I that we're like at 5 or 6 p.m. and we're like, we're not even going to talk to each other.
Mm-hmm. We just need some quiet
like
time.
Literally talked out. But sometimes with family, if you don't have that boundary set, you are just talking and talking all day for 5, 7, 10 days. And that's not even natural for you in your daily life.
Absolutely. Another one around that is the amount of activities. So this is definitely applicable when you're visiting them. Before we went to see my brother and sister-in-law in Boston, we had a conversation about, hey, we've got this baby. Doing a lot of outside activities can be overwhelming and stressful. And so we talked through what we envision and wouldn't feel too energy depleting. Same thing with your parents, though. We had some great conversations about, how many family events we were going to go to. And, okay, so since we're going to go to that barbecue and then that dinner, then we just want the morning to be relaxing. Whereas if they just kind of said, oh, you're in town, we have all these plans, and they
Yeah.
kind of assumed it. But they know, because we've had so many conversations with them about boundaries, requests, they know to say, hey, here's some ideas, but does this work for you?
And I guess that's our sister-in-law, credit.
Mm-hmm.
She, because of these conversations, and they're also, great communicators, you'll notice that as you start to have these conversations around boundaries and expectations with your family, it'll become a thing that they know to do. So they might even reach out to you. So our sister-in-law reached out to us, obviously this being a new trip because we have a baby this time, which didn't happen before. And she asked us, hey, what types of activities, what's your amount of outside the house versus inside the house, timings on everything. And I mean, that was a wonderful message to receive. And that really has come because we've had these conversations over the years.
Yeah, making sure that you're all on the same page about the amount of activities. I want to also kind of circle back to one that was discussed briefly around the topics, because I know that one source of conflict that's big for, the couples and then also somewhat to the in-laws is feeling as though there's not a plan for how to handle if something is said or done that doesn't resonate or you don't align with. And so what I encourage you to do is discuss as a couple. Like maybe it's parenting. Maybe you feel always like one in-law is always giving you parenting advice and you don't like it. And then you go back to your Airbnb or your room and then you go, you said nothing when your, mom said that. Like you didn't defend me, or you just let her say that. And so there can be some frustration. So discuss even a plan for how to handle those moments. If they're going to always bring up politics and it's going to become this battle, then, okay, all right, an example. Hey, Aaron, let's win, and this is just an example. So if our mother-in-law listens, this isn't my experience, but let's say Aaron's mom gave a lot of unsolicited parenting advice. Then I would discuss with you, Aaron, hey, when that happens, I would love if we both just said something like, thanks so much for that. We will take that into consideration. And we feel really great about our parenting approach right now. As opposed to arguing with them and then it turning into a bigger frustration. And so I think just having a plan
to your
for how to
point, me
handle
sitting
that.
on the sidelines and letting you battle it out with my mom, and then you're frustrated with me later because I didn't have your back or I didn't say anything. I didn't think of this one before we planned this podcast. This is actually a really good one. For those of you listening, you probably didn't think about that, but it might happen. And I know for me, I've heard from a lot of other partners that they don't want to create conflict or tension with their family. So when it does feel like something comes up, kind of take more of a passive back seat, kind of let it happen. And it does feel as if you're kind of leaving your partner out there to dry. And even taking a back seat, then it could feel to you or to your partner as if it was almost like 3 against 1, and not like you ever feel like it's 2 against 2. But if I'm not saying anything, because I'm trying to keep the peace, I'm not necessarily in a neutral place. Your partner's actually going to feel like, because you didn't back them up, that you had your parents' side in a way. So I just want to throw that out there for those that experience that.
Yeah, I know some of you might be wondering, well, what if because we both grew up in such different environments and different kind of family dynamics, what if we totally disagree? Well, that's definitely two parts to my answer there. There's how you each grew up, but then there's what is important to you for this new family unit that you're creating. And you can't just bring in by default how things were done in your upbringing. If you see yourselves as a team, like it's no longer just about me, Aaron, right? It's not like you are just there to fit into the mold of my life. No, we are a team and we're forming our new family structure, what we value. Maybe have you guys even discussed what you value? That's actually going to be another aspect of the couples workshop, just to drop that in there. But what you value as a couple likely could be different than each of your experiences growing up. So don't do things by default.
Or your family currently.
Exactly. And so make sure that you are thinking beyond yourself and the way you want it, and think about us as a team. What's best for us as a couple and our family unit and what we value. So if you disagree, okay, it's not about you two individually anymore. What is best for our partnership? And start to think that way. What's going to create more harmony for us when we're on these trips? And you can meet in the middle. We believe that with enough open communication, you can absolutely meet in the middle. You got to be a little flexible sometimes. You got to communicate. Now, with this podcast, the goal is that you can discuss these things, preventatively. Sometimes it's going to happen on the trip. Again, if you want support in discussing expectations and how to do that in a healthy way, even within your marriage, but it could be expectations around parenting and how you do that. It could be expectations around technology use. Whatever the topic is, again, we just really want to reiterate the power of going through the exercises with us on the Couples Workshop. So make sure you go to thecouplesworkshop.com, save your seats. And what else? Anything you want to say about the in-laws conversation?
Well, the last one, and we're really under the category of time boundaries still, and you can see how many different flavors and aspects there are. Really, the last one we wanted to bring up was morning and evening routines. And this gets more dynamic when you have kids as well, because your morning and evening routine does change for yourself, let alone that's going to be different from your parents. Your parents don't have young kids anymore. And so their morning and evening routines are different than yours. Yours are now different than they were when you didn't have any kids. So the whole thing can get very dynamic and complex. So with the morning, really talking about with your extended family, with your in-laws, how, even as simple as what time do they wake up? If you're a family like Jocelyn's side of the family, we all like to work out and stay healthy and fit. So there's going to the gyms in the morning. There is meditation times in the morning. There's walking dogs. There's having coffee. You might want to do some of that on your own rather than I wake up and now I'm immediately obligated to get into conversations, with family. So how do you guard your time? How do you want to set yourself up for the morning? That's a huge one we've talked about between couples, setting up your morning routine. So you can see how if you're not even on the same page there, you're just kind of setting yourself up for an upset with being on trips and vacations.
Yes.
So the whole morning time, and then you can add more as well. Then there's the evening time. We end up playing like games and cards with my parents. There could be watching TV. There's the time you actually go to sleep. If you're more used to going to sleep early, but your parents or cousins or brothers like to stay up late, then do you feel obligated to stay up and talk with them? And then you feel off the next day, your energy is low. Then if you don't have a morning one, not only are you drained from staying up late the night before, now you're a few hours into the morning and you're not obligated to keep on talking. You can feel how your energy just starts to get depleted without these particular time boundaries.
That actually made me think of another one that's kind of super specific, but could still be the case with people, is about how you eat. Maybe you feel as though you just have to fall into exactly what they cook and what they eat, and maybe that doesn't align with what is best for you. And so that's actually one thing we discussed before our trips was our desires around food and the way we're eating right now. So that's just a specific one. What we want you to take away, whatever the example is in your relationship, is that boundaries aren't about creating limits or blocking people. Boundaries are about open communication and creating more peace and harmony and understanding. And so don't fear conflict. Focus on expressing them in a proactive way as opposed to reactive, and why it's important to you and what you value. And make sure you as a couple have a plan for how to handle things that don't align with you. So we hope this was helpful. We know in this summertime, a lot of you are visiting family just like we are. And so we hope you get to put this into practice very soon. You could apply all the same things with friends too, by the way, or coworkers, anyone really. So many of these things can be applied. So we hope you enjoyed this episode. Let us know, send us a message if this was applicable. And if it is a source of conflict still, or you're still not communicating in a easier, more connecting way, you just got to attend the Couples Workshop, you guys. That's what we're here for. With that, everyone, we love you